Welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. Today we're going to be getting random numbers and then we're going to be rounding those numbers down or up based on what the random blocks do. So we'll be diving into that really quickly and I'll explain what's going on. So first things first, let's go ahead and get some random numbers. We can go to the math tab and there's three different versions of random numbers that we can use. We can use the random block right here, which actually has a whole bunch of different operations under it. If you click on the number part here, we just want this one right here, which is 0 to 1, which will go from 0 to a 1, and there will be a decimal point between that. So we can print out that value and get a general value for that. And then there is two other random blocks here. These are on more newer versions of MCreator. The first one down here is basically going to generate a random number between 1 and 10 as a decimal point. We're going to print out that number next, and then what we're going to do is there is the one that says random integer min and max number. What this means is it's going to generate a solid number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until it gets to 10. So rather than have a decimal point, it's always going to be a rounded number in this case. We're going to pop into game and then I'm just going to demonstrate what happens when we're running it exactly like this. This trigger itself says it runs on server side, but it's actually running on both the client and server. We'll be demonstrate how the random blocks actually work on both of these sides. Okay, so I'm in game and right on the top left corner, I'm going to demonstrate when I right click on something and it's going to print out a whole bunch of text. I'm going to break down what's going on here and you can kind of see just from a quick glance that the random numbers are not the same between client, which is the render thread, and the server side, which is the server thread. When you're working with these random blocks, these values are always going to be different depending on what side you're basically running it on. This can lead to client server side mismatches and other issues. So when you're working with these blocks or values that use these blocks or values from these blocks, always make sure to run it on a specific side. So in most cases, if you're working on something that is block updated or something like that, or entity even, if it's not specifically needed for a GUI or something client side, then most likely what you're going to want to do is run it on the server side specifically. So in the small case that you have to run it on client side, then you would just run it on client side and it'll separate those values and make sure that they're just a single value that's going to be used, because if you're trying to do both, then it might not work or cause issues with your script. So just keep that in mind. We can roll it again and you can see that the numbers are still weird on both of these two. Also, you might notice that the value for the first block is actually just a value between 0 and 1. So obviously there isn't much difference on that one, but the second one below that is a value between 1 and 10, and it has a decimal point after that. And then we can also see the bottom one on the very last entry is always an integer, so it's always a solid number. So let's go ahead and move on to rounding blocks next. I have a very simple script here. What I'm doing is I created a local variable and I'm going to put that random number that is the decimal point one from 1 to 10, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set this number to 0.4 and we're going to set this value to 0.6. So this will give us a value somewhere between these two, where it might be a little bit on the 4 side, where the other value might be a little bit more on the 5 side. So basically above 0.5. That will allow us to kind of demonstrate the random blocks a little bit better. We're going to go ahead and use this value when we're printing out these messages. So I'm going to grab the dice variable here and we're going to go to the math block one, and there's a block here that says round. We can actually put that on where we want to round our block. Now the round block here, this one will basically round either up or down depending on the threshold of the decimal point. So the decimal point, if it is 0.5 or greater than, then what it's going to do is it's always going to be rounding up to the next highest number, where if the number is less than 0.5, then what it's going to do is always round down. We can also right click on this and it'll give us a whole bunch of different options for other things as well. And there's an option here where it says round up, where this one will always round up regardless of the decimal decimal point or the threshold. So basically, if it's 0.4, it will always round up whatever the next solid number is. Rounding down is very similar. This one's always going to round down. So let's go ahead and demonstrate some of these by printing out our value here. And we're going to go ahead and round up for that one and then round down for this one. And I'm just going to print out the variable first as well. And then we'll give this a try. Let's go ahead and right click somewhere. And you can see now it's only rolling the value on the server side. So we can demonstrate the values a little bit easier. So this one actually rolled a 0.4. So that was actually round down to 0 for our first block. And then the other blocks are always going to be the same based on the rounding part because they're always going to either be rounding up or down. Second one's always rounding up, and then the third one below that is always going to round down. So let's go ahead and click again. That one gave us a 0.59. So we got a 1 and a decimal point of 1. You can also notice that the round block itself is turning the value to an integer. So the other blocks for rounding up or down don't do that. It's just basically going ahead, adding a decimal point for that. So you might need that for certain values or something like that. One thing to note that if you need to round something down, you can always do it through the round up or round down first, and then basically round it again with the decimal point to get an integer value as well. Your assignment today is to create something from these blocks. Basically, I want you to create a dice that will roll between 1 and 6 using a random number that is a decimal point. You're going to be rounding the value to get a integer of some sort. Then you're going to be passing that over to a variable, which will allow you to then use the variable in your print block message here. And then you're going to be printing this value out to the console. You can use multiple of these blocks. You can actually use this to round down the variable as well if you are making it an integer. You can have only no more than 2 round blocks to actually achieve your goal. So that is your assignment today, to create a simple dice, and let me know in the comments if you were able to get it working. So outside of that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.